I got this fantasy. I started working out this fantasy in my mind, and once that person become a fantasy, I could just loop it over. I'd lay in bed at night thinking about this person, the events, and how it's going to happen, and it became a real, almost like a picture show. You know, I wanted to go ahead and produce it, direct it, and go through with it, no matter what the costs were and the consequences.
Do you admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
I'm asking you the questions, my friend.
Yes, I am evil.
Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I really offered society something.
These are the most scary interviews with serial killers. Number 9, Gary Ridgway, infamously known as the Green River Killer.
Well, one of them was, a woman would get in the car.
She's already in the car?
She's in the car. Let's say she's always in the car. We're driving down the road, and she wants to see my ID. So I whipped out my ID, and with my ID would be I put my finger over my driver's license to hide my name.
Earned his moniker after his first victims were discovered near Washington's Green River. His method typically involved picking up women along the roadside, gaining their trust, killing them, and then disposing of their bodies in the forested areas of King County, Washington.
But on the opposite side was pictures. And a picture of my son. And they would see my son, and they would know I was probably a normal person.
These crimes spanned from the 1980s into the early 1990s. Ridgway is believed to have murdered between 70 and 90 women, many of whom were runaways or night workers. He eventually confessed to the crimes, admitting that he committed them so frequently he lost track of the total number.
On a lot of them.
In an interview, Ridgway revealed his strategy of using a photo of his son to manipulate his victims into trusting him.
You had to make it sound good.
I had a driver's license on one side, my ID, and then when I showed and then the next picture was my son, so that was, and in the vehicle I had always had some, not always, but had some of my son's stuff in there, you know, that he left in there, or some Star Wars or something like that, you know, so it was like a family setting.
In your vehicle?
Yeah, so every time I opened up my wallet, there would be a picture of my son.
He also recounted a chilling incident where he picked up a victim while his son was in the car.
July 18th, I think, was my brother's birthday. That weekend I picked up a woman on Pack Highway, and Matthew was next to me in the seat, and she hopped in, and I took her over to in the South Airport area, and into an area, and my son was there, and I kept her. I'm real sure my son didn't see it, but that only happened one time.
Number 8. Dennis Rader, known as the BTK Killer, short for Bind, Torture, Kill, terrorized Wichita, Kansas, by taking 10 lives between 1974 and 1991. Throughout his spree, Rader taunted law enforcement with cryptic messages, boasting about his crimes and demanding media attention. Although his final known murder occurred in 1991, he evaded capture until 2005 after reigniting his communication with the police as BTK. Rader's arrogance ultimately led to his downfall. He sent a floppy disk to the police, convinced they couldn't trace it back to him. However, investigators quickly linked the disk to a computer at the church, where Rader was a respected member. In a later interview with NBC News, Rader offered little new information, but provided glimpses into his twisted mindset.
I actually think I'm maybe possessed with demons. I was dropped on my head when I was a kid. That's the only thing I can figure out. I have, something drove me to do this. The normal people just don't do this.
You can't stop it.
I can't stop it. It's just, it controls me. You know, it's like it's in the driver's seat.
Rader also detailed the careful planning behind his crimes.
Stalking stage is when you start learning more about your victims, potential victims. Went to the library, I looked up their names, that address, cross-referenced, and called them a couple of times.
Upon his arrest, Rader admitted he had been preparing to do his activities again, having already identified and begun stalking his next intended victim. Number 7. Edmund Kemper, infamously dubbed the Co-Ed Killer, murdered 5 female college students who were hitchhiking between May 1972 and February 1973. After killing his victims, Kemper often engaged in disturbing acts with their remains.
I'm saying I'd wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that.
Kemper's violent tendencies first surfaced at age 15 when he killed his grandparents.
And then a month later, I'm up living with my grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later, I murdered them.
Later claiming he did so to see what it felt like.
And a week later, I murdered my mother.
He killed her with a hammer in her sleep.
Initially planning to flee, Kemper instead turned himself in after hearing a radio broadcast about his crimes. In prison interviews, Kemper remained unnervingly calm and candid, openly recounting even the most graphic details of his actions with a detached and matter-of-fact demeanor.
It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's, destruction of things that are cared about, and then destruction of things that are living on a lower level, small animals, insects, animals, and then finally people.
Number 6. Between 1976 and 1977, David Berkowitz, later known as the Son of Sam, caught 6 bodies in a spree he attributed to demonic influence. Berkowitz claimed he was under Satan's control and said the name Son of Sam referred to his neighbor, Sam Carr, whose dog he believed was possessed by a demon that commanded him to do evil. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, Berkowitz's crimes fueled speculation that he wasn't acting alone. Some law enforcement officials suspected other members of a satanic cult were involved in the Son of Sam shootings. Regardless, Berkowitz was convicted and sentenced to 6 consecutive life terms. In a reflective interview, Berkowitz spoke about his supposed past allegiance to the devil and participation in satanic rituals.
Around the age of 5, I began to experience a lot of emotional problems and inner struggles. I began to have various emotional and psychological problems. I was not behaving and not growing up as a normal child.
He described his former mindset, stating, "My job was to be a soldier for the devil, to bring destruction."
Asked the devil to come into my life and take over, and I surrendered myself to this being that in my twisted thinking, I thought was somehow going to be my friend or something. I actually believed this in my mind. I become convinced over time that my job was to be a soldier for the devil and to bring destruction. Ultimately, that good would become of it, that it will help bring about the apocalypse, the end of the world, so that God could establish his kingdom of peace.
Number 5. Throughout the 1970s, Ted Bundy killed at least 20 women, often engaging in weird acts with the remains. Despite the grotesque nature of his crimes, Bundy described himself as essentially a normal person who harbored a dark, hidden side.
I grew up in a wonderful home with 2 dedicated and loving parents, one of 5 brothers and sisters. A home where we as children were the focus of my parents' lives, where we regularly attended church, 2 Christian parents who did not drink, they did not smoke, there was no gambling, there was no physical abuse or fighting in the home.
After his capture, he attributed his violent acts to an intense addiction to violent adult films, which he claimed fueled his compulsions. In Bundy's final interview, he spoke with psychologist Dr. James Dobson. Bundy used the platform to warn about the dangers of adult content.
My experience with, let's say, pornography generally, but with pornography that deals on a violent level with the sexuality, is that once you become addicted to it, and I look at this as a kind of addiction. Like an addiction, you keep craving something which is harder, something which gives you a greater sense of excitement, until you reach the point where the pornography only goes so far. You reach that jumping off point where you begin to wonder if maybe actually doing it will give you that which is beyond just reading about it or looking at it.
Number 4. Richard Ramirez, infamously known as the Night Stalker, killed more than 15 people between June 1984 and August 1985, focusing his reign of terror in the San Francisco and Los Angeles areas. After a year of brutal crimes, Ramirez was captured in dramatic fashion when a group of East Los Angeles residents recognized him leaving a convenience store and chased him down, ultimately subduing him until police arrived. In a jailhouse interview with journalist Mike Watkis, Ramirez delved into his fascination with the concept of evil. The discussion spanned philosophical reflections on morality, his thoughts on the women who became infatuated with him after his imprisonment, including one juror from his trial, and his personal political views. When asked about his nature, Ramirez denied experiencing typical human emotions and remarked,
Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do on a large one. They are a product of the times, and these are bloodthirsty times. Even psychopaths have emotions if you dig deep enough, but then again, maybe they don't. This nation, this country is founded in violence. Violent delights tend to have violent ends. Madness is something rare in individuals, but in groups, people, and ages, it is a rule. Killing is killing, whether done for duty, profit, or fun. Men murdered themselves into this democracy.
When Watkis asked if he considered himself evil, Ramirez smirked and replied,
Do you admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
I'm asking you the questions, my friend.
Yes, I am evil. Not 100%, but I am evil.
Ramirez was sentenced to death in 1989, but remained on death row until his death in prison on June 7, 2013. Number 3. Jeffrey Dahmer, a seemingly unassuming chocolate factory worker, committed heinous crimes against 17 victims between 1978 and 1991. In a 1994 interview with Stone Phillips, Dahmer's calm, polite demeanor starkly contrasted with the brutality of his actions. While he expressed regret and an awareness of the gravity of his crimes, he also candidly discussed the disturbing satisfaction he derived from exerting control over his victims.
Was this about some kind of desire to keep these people with you, not to be abandoned, not to have them leave?
I think that did play into it, but there was a big element of wanting complete control over someone, total control, not having to consider their wishes, being able to keep them there as long as I wanted.
Dahmer provides a vague yet disturbing account of his first incident.
What happened after you took him to the house?
We talked, had some drinks. I knocked him out, and that was the first time.
Jeffrey Dahmer was killed in prison on November 28, 1994, at the age of 34. Number 2. Charles Manson, a career criminal and notorious leader of the Manson family cult, became infamous for his erratic and unsettling interviews during his decades of incarceration. Manson was sentenced to life in prison for masterminding the brutal murders of actress Sharon Tate and 6 others on August 8th to 9th, 1969. Despite not directly committing the killings, his manipulation and influence over his followers cemented his legacy as one of history's most infamous criminals. In a 1987 interview with Heidi Schulman, Manson went on several tangents about the state of the world, all while expressing no remorse for his crimes, going so far as to say he hadn't committed any.
Remorse for what? You people have done everything in the world to me. Doesn't that give me equal right? I can do anything I want to you people at any time I want to, because that's what you've done to me. If you spit in my face and smack me in the mouth and throw me in solitary confinement for nothing, what do you think's going to happen when I get out of here?
Manson added that he maybe felt remorse for not doing enough.
You don't feel guilty at all?
There's no need to feel guilty. I haven't done anything I'm ashamed of. Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough, for not giving enough, for not being more perceptive, for not being aware enough, for not understanding, for being stupid. Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I really offered society something.
Towards the end of an interview with reporter Penny Daniels, Charles Manson made one of his most chilling remarks, saying,
You know, if I wanted to kill somebody, I'd take this book and beat you to death with it, and I wouldn't feel a thing. It'd be just like walking to the drugstore.
Manson concluded the conversation with a bizarre and cutting comment.
Hey, you don't mind if I'm directing to the point, do you?
Not at all.
It don't take me to tell you that you're about 10 pounds overweight, does it?
Thanks.
But I can be honest with you, Ken.
Charles Manson died on November 19, 2017, in a California hospital at the age of 83, marking the end of a life that captivated and horrified the public for decades. Number 1. John Wayne Gacy, once a respected and seemingly upstanding member of his community, led a horrifying double life that came to light with his arrest on December 21, 1978. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered 33 young men and boys, hiding the remains of 26 victims in the crawl space beneath his Chicago area home. This revelation shocked the nation, exposing the depths of his gruesome crimes. Gacy later claimed to feel no remorse for his crimes, and until the end of his life, he remained in complete denial about them. In an interview given shortly before his execution, Gacy states that he didn't murder anyone and was actually a victim himself.
People don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it. If they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
However, Gacy seemingly slips up in the interview and refers to his victim John Berkowitz as one of the people he didn't murder.
What happened to, what happened in the Berkowitz case? Where was he picked up, and how did he get to the house, and what happened with him?
I don't want to go into the other, the 5 that I know about. Just take it that I did. Berkowitz is not one that I killed, so I don't know nothing about him. The little bit that I know about him is that he was an employee of mine. See, when you look about this recall business, and
I'm not a prosecutor, John, but you just
I know you're not.
Berkowitz
Wait a minute.
Is not one that you killed, which suggests that maybe in fact there were others that you did kill.
Okay, I'm sorry if I led you to believe. No, strike it then. That is wrong.
Gacy was ultimately executed via lethal injection by order of the Supreme Court on May 10, 1994.